The alarms of the slave market rang louder than usual that morning. Smoke from the burning wreckage outside drifted through the cracked ceiling, carrying the bitter smell of war. Chains clinked as guards dragged frightened captives from one pen to another. Among the noise and chaos, Rylan, a human slave owned by one of the wealthiest alien merchants, was ordered to stand ready with a food tray. He had seen hundreds of slaves come and go, but today felt different. The crowd outside was larger. The shouts were angrier. Something was about to happen. The master arrived with his usual air of dominance. Tall and robed in gold-threaded fabric, his multi-eyed gaze scanned the rows of captives like a predator searching for prey. Behind him, 2 guards pulled a new slave into the chamber. She was unlike any alien Rylan had ever seen. Her skin was deep blue, glowing faintly in the dim light. Her silver hair flowed like liquid metal, framing a face that looked both fierce and heartbreakingly beautiful. Her wrists were bound with heavy cuffs, and a slave collar gleamed at her neck. Yet even chained, she stood tall, her eyes defiant. Rylan had been told never to speak unless ordered, but something about her presence broke through his caution. She looked around the room, her gaze sweeping past the guards and stopping on him. For a brief second, he felt as though she saw through him, past his chains, past his role, straight into his thoughts. The connection was instant, like lightning striking dry ground. Then she looked away, expression cold again, and he reminded himself he was nothing more than another servant in the master's house. The master began speaking with the market overseer. Words about price, value, and usefulness floated through the air. Rylan caught fragments: rare species, unknown heritage, dangerous but valuable. He had heard similar words used to describe exotic beasts, never people. His gut told him there was more to her than her appearance. Something in her posture, in the way she measured every corner of the room, hinted she was no ordinary captive. And when her eyes flickered toward the exits, he realized she was assessing escape routes. As the deal concluded, the master gestured to Rylan. "Prepare her quarters," he ordered. The girl was led toward him, chains rattling with each step. When she passed close, Rylan caught a faint, unfamiliar scent: fresh rain over stone, mixed with something sharp like ozone. It was unlike any alien scent he had encountered in the years he had served. It was as though she carried the storm with her. The guards shoved her forward, but her gaze locked on his once more, and this time he thought he saw the corner of her lips twitch in the barest hint of a smile. The walk back to the master's estate was silent. The alien girl walked between 2 armed guards, her chains clinking with each step. Rylan followed a few paces behind, carrying a box of supplies for her new quarters. He noticed how she moved not like a beaten captive, but like a trained fighter forced into stillness. Even her chains didn't slow her as much as they should have. She glanced at every doorway, every window, every guard they passed. It was as if she was mapping the place in her mind. The master's estate was a fortress disguised as luxury. Marble-like alien stone covered the floors. The walls were lined with rare artifacts from 100 worlds. Yet behind the beauty, the entire place was a cage. Guards stood at every entrance, and security drones floated in the hallways. The master took pride in keeping his property secure. Rylan had lived here for years and knew escape was impossible. For most. Still, he had a feeling this girl might try anyway. When they reached the inner quarters, the master ordered the guards to remove her chains, but leave the collar. The heavy iron dropped from her wrists, but she didn't rub her skin or flinch at the marks it had left. Instead, she stood straight, her silver hair catching the light. The master studied her like an object in his collection. "You will work in the inner hall," he said. "Obey, and you will live. Disobey, and you will regret it." She said nothing, but her eyes burned with something Rylan couldn't name. Rylan was told to show her the room where she would sleep. It was small but cleaner than most servant quarters. A narrow bed, a small table, and a single barred window. He placed the supply box on the table and turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "You're human," she said. Her words were quiet, but there was weight in them. He nodded. "And you're not like the others," she added. Rylan hesitated. "Neither are you," he replied. Her gaze sharpened, as if he had said more than he realized. For the next few days, she worked without complaint, serving in the inner hall during meals and events. Rylan noticed that she never wasted a movement. She never seemed tired, even after long hours. And she was always watching, listening to the guests, noting which guards rotated where, and memorizing the layout of the estate. At night, when the rest of the servants spoke in whispers or tried to rest, she would sit at her table, staring at the barred window as if calculating something only she understood. One evening, while delivering food to the master's private hall, Rylan found her. Already there, setting the table. No guards were in sight. She looked up and spoke in a low voice. "You know this place better than anyone. You've seen how it works. Tell me, do you want to stay here forever?" Rylan froze. The question was dangerous, even whispered. "I don't have a choice," he said. "Everyone has a choice," she replied. "Even in chains." Her words were calm, but they carried the kind of certainty that made him uneasy. He wanted to ask her what she meant, but the sound of footsteps ended the moment. Guards entered, and the master followed, his robe trailing behind him. Rylan stepped back into his role, silent and unnoticed. The girl returned to her task, her expression unreadable. Yet, as she passed him on the way out, she let her hand brush against his. It was quick, so small it could have been an accident, but in her palm she left something, an odd, flat piece of metal no bigger than a coin. Later that night, alone in his quarters, Rylan studied the object. It wasn't currency or jewelry. It was some kind of device, covered in markings he didn't recognize. When he pressed it between his fingers, it gave a faint hum. He realized it wasn't just a random trinket. It was a message, an invitation, or perhaps a test. If he showed it to the wrong person, he could be executed. If he ignored it, he might never know what she was truly planning. For the first time in years, Rylan felt something he thought he had lost: possibility. The next morning began like any other, but Rylan could not stop thinking about the strange metal piece in his pocket. He kept it hidden, even while working, fearing that the guards would notice. Every time the alien girl passed by, he wondered if she would say something, but she did not. Her face remained calm, her movements precise, her attention always on the room and the people within it. Yet, when her eyes met his, there was a spark that told him she had not forgotten what she had given him. During the midday meal, the master hosted guests from another planet. They were tall, insect-like beings with sharp voices and sharper eyes. The alien girl served them without flinching, even when one of them hissed something insulting in a language Rylan could not understand. She responded with a polite nod, but her eyes never softened. Rylan noticed that she poured drinks in a particular order, moving in a way that seemed casual but was too precise to be an accident. It was like watching someone place pieces on a game board. That night, when the halls grew quiet, Rylan found her near the water basin in the servants' courtyard. She stood with her back to him, gazing at the stars visible through the high windows. He approached slowly, pulling the metal piece from his pocket. "What is this?" he asked. She turned, her silver hair catching the faint light. "It is a key," she said. "Not to a door, to me." Her words made no sense, yet her tone left no room for doubt. She reached out, closing his hand around it. "Keep it safe. One day, I will ask for it back." Before he could ask what she meant, footsteps echoed down the hall. She stepped away, returning to her work as if nothing had happened. Rylan hid the object again, but his mind was full of questions. Who was she really? How could she be more than what she appeared to be? And why did she trust him, a human slave? with nothing to offer. His instincts told him that the answers would not come easily. 2 days later, the master summoned both of them to his private study. The room was dimly lit, filled with scrolls, maps, and strange alien artifacts. He studied them in silence for a moment before speaking. "The city is unstable," the master said. "War is coming closer. I may be forced to move my property somewhere safer. Until then, you two will work together. You will guard her when she leaves the hall, Rylan." The order shocked him. He was no guard, yet now he would be at her side more often than ever. Their first task together was delivering a sealed container to the outer market. 2 guards followed them, but their attention drifted often. The alien girl walked calmly, but every now and then she tilted her head slightly, as if listening to something far away. When they passed an alley, she slowed for half a step, scanning the shadows. Rylan noticed it too, a flicker of movement, someone watching them. She said nothing, but he could feel her alertness grow sharper. On the way back, a sudden noise erupted from a nearby building. Smoke poured from the doorway, and people began shouting. The guards rushed toward the commotion, leaving Rylan and the girl briefly alone. She turned to him, her voice low and quick. "If you want to be free, meet me in the lower storage hall at the next moonrise. Bring the key." Before he could reply, the guards returned, and she fell silent again. That night, Rylan could not sleep. Her words played over in his head. Freedom was a dangerous dream, one that could cost lives if it failed. Yet, she spoke with such certainty that it felt less like a dream and more like a promise. He took the metal piece from its hiding place, feeling its faint hum. The choice before him was clear, though it carried more risk than anything he had faced before. When the moonlight finally spilled through the high window of his room, he knew what he had to do. Asterisk. The lower storage hall was colder than the rest of the estate. Dust clung to the air, and the faint smell of metal and oil lingered in the shadows. Rylan moved quietly, the metal piece hidden in his hand. The moonlight filtered in through a single barred window, casting pale light across the stacked crates and old machinery. He heard footsteps approaching from the far side, and knew it was her before she stepped into view. She wore the same simple servant's clothing, but her posture was different, less like a slave and more like a commander in disguise. Her silver hair shimmered under the light, and her eyes locked onto him immediately. "Do you have it?" she asked. Rylan nodded and held out the metal piece. She took it gently, turning it in her fingers until it clicked open like unfolding wings. Inside was a tiny crystal that pulsed with light. "This is a shard of my identity," she said. "With it, I can call my people." Before Rylan could react, the sound of boots echoed down the hallway. She closed the device in one motion and slipped it into her sleeve. Guards appeared at the doorway, their eyes narrowing. "What are you two doing here?" one demanded. Rylan stepped forward, keeping his voice steady. "The master told me to move these crates, and she was helping." The guards exchanged glances but did not leave. The girl's calm expression never wavered. "We will continue tomorrow," she said, her tone flat but carrying a strange authority. The guards hesitated, then stepped back to watch from a distance. Once they were out of earshot, she leaned close enough for him to hear her whisper, "Tomorrow night, I send the signal. When it happens, the estate will no longer be safe for you or me. Be ready to move." Her words sent a surge of adrenaline through him. The idea of leaving the estate was almost unthinkable, yet now it was becoming real. He had no idea what kind of people she was calling, but he knew he was going with her. The next day, tension gripped the estate. The master seemed restless, pacing through the halls more than usual. Guards were doubled at the gates and drones buzzed along the corridors. Rylan worked as ordered, his eyes always finding the girl across the room. She gave no sign of their plan, serving food and clearing tables as if nothing had changed. Yet, he could feel the invisible thread between them tightening as the sun began to fall. When night came, Raylan waited in his quarters, fully awake. The faint hum of the metal piece had stayed with him even after she had taken it back. Then, without warning, a deep vibration ran through the walls of the estate. Lights flickered. Outside, the distant roar of engines filled the air. He ran to the corridor, where servants were already panicking. She appeared through the chaos, moving toward him with swift, certain steps. "Now," she said, grabbing his arm. They moved quickly through the side passages, avoiding the main hall where guards shouted orders. At one corner, a pair of drones hovered toward them, but she raised her hand, and a beam of light from the device made them freeze midair. "This key is more than a signal," she told him. "It can shut down their machines." They reached a service door at the far end of the estate. Beyond it was a narrow path leading to the lower streets. He could hear the rumble of something massive approaching from above. As they slipped into the streets, Raylan saw the sky split with streaks of light. Ships sleek and alien descended through the night. Their hulls glowed faintly and strange. Symbols burned along their sides. "Your people," Raylan said, breathless. She gave a single nod. "And yours, if you choose to be free." The path forward was dangerous, but he knew he was already committed. Together, they moved toward the docking platforms, the sound of the Master's forces closing in behind them. The docking platforms were alive with motion. The alien ships hovered just above the ground, their engines glowing with a steady hum. Beams of light scanned the streets as soldiers in silver armor formed defensive lines. Raylan and the girl moved quickly, weaving through crates and fuel tanks while shouts and gunfire rang in the distance. The air was charged with heat and the sharp scent of burning metal. Every step brought them closer to the ships, but also closer to the enemy forces. Pouring into the area, a squad of the Master's guards appeared from a side passage, weapons raised. The girl stepped in front of Raylan, her voice cutting through the noise. "Stand down," she commanded, and for a moment, the guards froze. She reached into her sleeve, pulling out the small device he had carried for days. With a twist, the crystal inside flared, releasing a wave of light that swept across the guards. Their weapons powered down instantly, dropping uselessly to the ground. "Your Master's control ends tonight," she said. Her eyes locked on them until they turned and fled. They sprinted the last stretch toward the nearest ship. At the base of the ramp, two armored figures awaited them. As soon as they saw the girl, they saluted, their weapons held to their sides. "High Commander," one said, his voice metallic through his helmet. Raylan's steps faltered. "High Commander?" he repeated. She turned to him, the faintest smile breaking through her otherwise sharp expression. "I told you, the key was to me. My true name is not for your language, but I am the leader of our scattered fleets. Your master thought he bought a slave. He bought the one who will destroy his empire." Before he could respond, the ground shook with the impact of heavy weapons. Enemy reinforcements had arrived, their armored carriers blocking the far streets. The girl no, the commander grabbed his wrist and pulled him up the ramp. Inside, the ship's interior glowed with smooth panels and flowing lines of light. Soldiers took positions at their stations as the ramp sealed behind them. "Prepare for immediate liftoff," the commander ordered, her voice echoing with authority that no one dared question. The ship rose into the air, the city below shrinking in size. Through the viewing panels, Raylan saw the Master's estate. In the distance, bright flashes lit the night as the commander's fleet engaged enemy forces. "You risked everything by trusting me," she said, standing beside him. "Why?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "Because from the moment I saw you, I knew you didn't belong in chains. And neither do I." Her eyes softened for a heartbeat, then hardened again as an alarm pulsed across the bridge. One of the fleet captains appeared on a display. "High Commander, Enemy capital ships are approaching. The commander straightened. Then we finish this now. She turned to Rylan. You can stay aboard when we fight. If we win, you will be free. If we lose, you will die with us. He gave a small nod. Then I fight. She handed him a sleek silver rifle, unlike anything he had seen before. Stay close to me, she said. The battle outside intensified as the alien fleet engaged the larger enemy ships. Light from weapons fire lit the sky in colors Rylan had never imagined. The commander moved with precision, issuing orders, coordinating strikes, and never losing sight of the battlefield. Rylan fought alongside her soldiers when boarding parties broke through, holding the line until the last of the enemy attackers were driven out. The sound of the final enemy ship exploding in the distance brought silence to the bridge. When the dust cleared, the commander stepped to the center of the room. The Master's empire will fall within days, she declared. Every slave will be freed. Every world he chained will rise again. She turned to Rylan, her voice lowering so only he could hear. You have no collar now, human. You can go anywhere you wish. He shook his head. I think I'll see where your fight takes you. She studied him for a long moment before nodding. Then welcome to the fleet, she said, asterisk.